Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for watching the Capital B podcast live here streaming from 802 Scoop, filmed live from the Inside Scoop studio, Main Street, Barre, Vermont. With us today, we have Gina Galfetti, Mike Taglavia, and Topper McFawn. How you guys doing today?
Doing all right.
First rate, Mike. First rate.
Doing fantastic with an introduction like that, Mike.
I mean, you're going to get amazing quality from me. I mean, I'm just saying.
Goes without saying. Goes without saying.
Excited about what happened?
Lukewarm.
Lukewarm.
Yeah.
Lukewarm. We could
Let's
have
call
done
it
better.
lukewarm. Yeah.
We could have done better than that. And by we, I mean the Democrats.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It was a very big disappointment. It was very awkward. And Topper's gonna laugh hysterically because but I'm sitting there and I'm watching as part of the day. So for folks that don't know, we passed H454, which is the education reform bill.
Over to the Senate. Don't forget to tell them that
because
because
it passed out of the House, but it
over
still
it
needs
to
to
the
go to the
Senate,
Senate.
where
It's not
they're
a done
hopefully
deal.
going to do
Yeah.
a major overhaul on the thing.
It's definitely not a done deal, and it's a turd sandwich that we handed off to.
Yeah, and if they can't turn that into a steak and cheese, I won't be voting for it when it comes back.
Yeah.
I'd take a
Bologna
I
and
would take a bologna
bologna and
sandwich.
yellow American.
I
Over
hope we
what?
wind up with
On
steak
Wonder
and
Bread?
cheese. Yeah.
I can only hope that we will get steak and cheese, but my
Yeah.
my suspicion is we're gonna get back probably some Spam sandwich. Spam
Well-
isn't bad.
I don't think so.
The Senate minority,
Nope.
or the Senate pro tem, Phil Baruth, promised that it was going to be a bill with wide bipartisan support, and he even gave the number of 7 to 8 Republicans on it. So if he's going to achieve that, it's going to take reinventing the wheel for sure on that bill.
I know from what I saw in Senate Education one Friday afternoon when I sat in, it sounded like they were committed to actually getting some real work done. I walked out of that meeting or that session of their committee feeling better than what I was hearing out of our
Yeah.
House Education Committee, because it sounded like they were bouncing all over and were kind of chasing their tail. So we'll see what happens. I hope it's like Gina said, we
Yeah,
do
yeah.
actually get something that's
That we
that
can
the
all vote
voters
for.
can actually say they
And that
look
the-
at it and feel comfortable with.
Yeah, we need something to vote that's actually going to benefit the voters, Mike. You're totally right there.
Yeah.
Well, the big thing that I'm hoping for is it'll come back with enough changes so that the governor's going to be able to sign it, number one. Number two, a lot more people are going to be able to get to yes. If that happens, it should be a bill that's going to be in the best interest of the kids that are going to be impacted by what we're doing.
Right.
That's where the important piece is, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely agree. So,
And as Gina said, there's a promise that was made by the leadership in the Senate that they would work hard on it to get it back. Get it back nonpartisan.
Unfortunately, as Rep. Mary Morrissey from Bennington pointed out, we did not get that on paper. So this will be a big trust exercise to see if we can actually work in a meaningful way with the Democrat majority that's in Montpelier. And judging from what the House leadership and Speaker Kerwinski has done thus far in the House, it sure doesn't seem like they're willing to work with us. So we can only throw this bill through as a Hail Mary pass to the Senate and hope that they can do better, which is a shame because we do have a mandate from the voters to work together, and Republicans are willing. Phil Scott Republicans are the party of now, not the party of no.
Wait a minute. I'm so irritated by that. I can't help myself.
What's that?
Well, you made that same statement on the floor, and when there was a
Yeah, there was
I'm not
some
gonna say who did it.
snickering,
I'm not
and
gonna, and I don't want to say it here who did it. But
decorum was certainly broken. And I'm one that has the utmost respect for decorum after having used the word nefarious in reference to the action on the BA, but it would appear that they don't have that same respect for us in the
there's
building.
definitely a double
And that's
standard.
indicative of the whole problem in there, right? Democrats aren't willing to come to the table and negotiate.
so we won't name names because I don't want to do that. But when Gina was giving her floor speech, she had made a comment about Phil Scott Republicans and trying to compromise, and a person laughed out loud, and then they put their head on their desk while they were chuckling. It was very irritating to me. One, because it was rude to you, and it was also rude to Phil. Two people that I like very much, and it was very
Well,
sad.
And it was beyond rude, Mike. For folks out there, the House floor is governed by something called Mason's rules. And it was a direct breach of Mason's rules for order and decorum and how you should carry yourself on the House floor. And it's a real slap in the face to Vermont democracy.
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with the Mason's rules. What I am familiar with is being respectful to people, and that was definitely not being respectful, in my opinion. It was shitty.
Yeah, all
It was
right.
shitty.
All right. Thanks for being frank, Mike.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna say that. I'm just gonna make that statement. That's
And
where
I
I'm gonna land
appreciate
on that.
I appreciate your support,
Yeah.
fellow classmate. Which incidentally, I talked to David Sheets. It may be a record that there are 3 Spalding class of '98 graduates that have all been representatives in the Vermont State House.
Ooh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
So you got me, got you, and we got
Emma Mulvaney Stanek, who I don't think wants to come on the show right off.
Probably not. and I'm.
But maybe
and
we'll
I'm-
have the reunion beat, and then we'll get a wide range of political opinions on here.
I don't know if she dislikes me as much as her mother dislikes me, but that's okay.
Oh, that's not true. I love her mother. I'm glad that she is feeling better after her heart attack last year. Joellen's good people, even if we don't see eye to eye.
I gave her a treadmill. She
All right.
needed a treadmill, and I gave her a treadmill after her
Spirit of
situation.
giving.
So regarding the Act 454, the abomination that was passed, do you want to? So I'm going to give the timeline, but the timeline was affected by the amendment, correct? Isn't
The
that
Donahue
how-
Amendment,
No, the
Tooth's
Tooth
amendment?
Yeah.
Toof and Houghton Amendment. I think marginally
it was
affected
like-
by their, but not in any real significant or meaningful way.
It brought it back about a year.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. So I'm going based on what the bill submitted originally was, because I have a little rundown list. The timeline for legislative work is 2026 session, create new larger school districts, which would have been done under the governor's plan this year.
Right.
2027 session, create voting wards within each school district for the election of school board members. And then November 28, the first school board member elections within newly created school districts. I mean, the thing that really frustrates me about the bill is that the governor's plan was far more bold, far more aggressive in modifying our education system, which is totally foobarred.
Well, it included a lot more detail. I mean, it was soup to nuts. It included everything, and it looks like this bill only starts with a small piece, and like you said, it puts off into the future some of the other stuff. And if you're trying to build a system like rebuild it as big as they're trying to do with the reform in the education system, it doesn't seem like it's going to work because the pieces are too spread apart.
No, and to that point, Mike, I think it's important to remember that the Democrats had no plan and continue to have no plan. They don't have a separate standalone bill that would reform the rat's nest that they've been creating for the last, when was Act 64, Topper, help me?
46?
Yeah, thanks. Dyslexic, Mike,
46.
Yep,
dyslexic.
2015.
2015.
Was when they did it.
Right, so the beginning of the end, and this hangs on them, and they should be the ones that have solutions to bring to the table too, if they're going to work in the spirit of compromise. And they're not doing that. They're not moving anything forward. They're just trying to blame the governor for bringing an education package forward that they can't support, even though it's based on really good evidence. So, let it go, let it go.
And this one does have different class sizes as well.
Yeah.
The class sizes, and this is what kind of frustrates me about this, is that the governor's plan took into account that study, right? The study that you guys authorized last year. Was it last year that you authorized it, the Picus report?
Was it last year or the year prior?
Yep.
Year
Yeah.
prior.
Year
prior.
So you guys paid for this huge study, right? Well, let me rephrase that. We paid for this huge study, the Picus report, and the information provided, it felt like it didn't really take all of it in. Specifically, the class sizes were significantly different. The class sizes in the Picus report were much larger than what was approved. And I think that's a product of the acronym mafia.
Oh, here we go, Mike. Did you take your blood pressure medicine today? That's all I want to know before we
man.
continue down this road. But yeah, all of the lobbying organizations for teachers, staff, faculty, and the like have driven the conversation from the Democrat side. And I'm not talking about what we can do for teachers. I'm talking about preserving positions across the state that may not necessarily be necessary, so that we can redistribute the money that's in education funding to the teachers that need it, and the students and the bricks and mortar and all of those things that are so critical to educating our children.
Yeah. The average class size for the students will be kindergarten class, 12 students. For grades 1 through 4 should be 15, and grades 5 through 12, 18.
Was that average or minimums?
That's average.
Okay, because I thought there was something that said one of them was minimums.
Minimum, oh, you're right. Average
That's what I
class
thought.
minimum. So average class minimum Should be 12. That's really confusing. Average class minimum should be 12.
I think it's listed that way because they're trying to, if there's a school that had a lot of class sizes that were smaller than that, those schools would wind up possibly being combined with another.
That is
think-
confusing as crap. Average class minimum.
Yeah.
I'm-
But see,
Well, the average can't
So
be
maybe-
lower than,
And
Right.
it means it takes all of the smallest class sizes and averages them together, Mike.
but
Whereas the average class maximum, it would take all of the aggregate large class sizes and average those ones together. So it's two separate numbers.
Why not do what the Picus report said, which gave average classes and gave maximum and minimums? Why not just do that?
Mike, you got to remember that the Senate
I'm all confused. by
didn't
this.
vote to approve the secretary or the Secretary of Education the first time around.
That's true. That's
So,
true.
and wasn't it, okay, the commission or the study was commissioned by the legislature, but didn't it go to the Secretary of Education? So it seems like everything that comes from either the governor or this Secretary of Education, the Democrats don't like, from my viewpoint.
Which is odd, because I heard that it's not like, I heard that Zoe Saunders isn't like some far-right radical.
She's not. She's absolutely not. She's a moderate, but she's representative of the Scott administration, which the Democrats will not compromise with the governor and will not work with the governor. And that's very evident in the policy that the supermajority and now the majority is pushing.
Yeah, that's why.
Albeit
somebody
they'd
said it
love
seems
to
like-
blame the administration for everything that's wrong that they created.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the debate, it went on the floor. I kept saying, wait a minute, how long have they been in either majority or supermajority? And it seemed like they were pointing their finger at themselves without pointing the finger at themselves. So, that was I was listening to some of the debate thinking, wait a minute, go and look in the mirror. So,
Yeah, because when was the last time, Topper, you'd know, when was the last time Republicans had a majority in the Vermont State House? Was it like 2008 or 9?
oh, hell no. We had a majority before I got in there. When I got elected, we did not have a majority.
Okay. I thought for some
We
reason
came
we'd had a
close to it.
bump.
We had 49. No, we didn't even come close to it. We had 51, I think it was. That was the highest until this last election. And that was like in 2008 or 9 or
That's what I
someplace in there.
thought. Yeah, that's the last time we'd been at these kinds of numbers
Yeah,
before.
yeah. Well, we
Yeah.
had the ability, no, it was 49. That's what it was, because we called ourselves the Fighting 49.
Right, as opposed to when I came in as a freshman and we were the hateful 38.
Yeah. and frankly, it was hard to get the 49 because sometimes when we'd be on the floor, we, as you well know, you're not told how to vote in our caucus, and you did not know how those 49 people were going to vote.
Yeah, because they were independent free thinkers that represented their constituents.
Yep.
Which I think Vermonters have overwhelmingly called for that kind of governance to return. And certainly by re-electing Phil Scott at the overwhelming numbers that Vermonters do each time that Governor Scott runs, I think that Vermonters are really signaling and ready for some change in Montpelier. Because let's face it, we could pretty much hang everything poor or everything bad that's happened in the last, 20 years, 25 years, on the majority, on the Democrats. They've been creating this policy. They've been creating the programming. They created the education funding formula. And they have to start owning this rather than blame the administration or blame the people for ignorance or blame the national agenda.
So Linda Otis posts here, you guys need to stop blaming each other and work together. We're Vermonters. This party BS is ridiculous. And you know
Couldn't
what?
agree
She's
more.
right. And I think I might be wrong, and based on the conversations that I've had, it sounds like it's going to be taken care of on the Senate side where they're going to be working together.
Yeah,
Well, then
I
it has to come back to us too, Mike.
I know,
Yeah.
but hopefully by then it will be all tweezed out.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to pass it. And all we need, the numbers that are the most important numbers are 76, 16, and 1.
which puts
House,
us
Senate,
in the majority,
Governor.
Mike. Exactly. So we can start getting some policy done. Because to Linda's point, yes, we need to start working together. But unfortunately, you can't build a sandcastle if you're sitting in the sandbox and your friend doesn't come over with the pail. And that's the reality of where we are. There's no willingness to compromise. And if you look at the voting records of Republicans and Democrats on every bill that passes over the course of the session, you'll see how many times Republicans over and over step over the fence to vote with our Democratic colleagues on social policy, on programming, on child care, on health care. We continually step over the aisle. But if you compare that data to the amount of times that the Democrats will vote with us, it's startling how few times they will come to either support our ideas, our legislation, or our fiscal responsibility.
And
So that's the reality.
And I can tell you, there are people who will say before there's a vote that they agree with our thinking and our side, but when it comes to a vote, before the vote, there's some sort of a meeting, and the vote doesn't reflect the feelings that they expressed prior to the vote.
Right, because there are conservative Democrats in that building, but they're so terrified by what has become the Democratic machine in this state that they're threatened with things like getting primaried out if they aren't in the right place on the vote. Or they're threatened with things like losing their chairship if they're not in the right place on the vote. Or they're threatened with things like losing their funding if they're not in the right place on the vote. And we don't do that to our people.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I have
So
no
that's
opinion,
one
but-
explanation for what your listener and your viewer is talking about.
The place where you can really see cooperation is in the committee. Now, is every committee like that? No. I know my committee is. There's a lot of cooperation. When the bills come out, except for one bill this year, it has come out unanimously every time. And that's due to the fact that you're able to get your positions in front of the committee, and the committee really looks at it and agree. So when you get 11 people sitting in the room, and 7 of them are Democrats, and you come out with a 11-0 vote, you know that you work together in the committee.
Well, and that's indicative again, though, Topper, of the Republicans willing to work with the Democrats because it's the Democrat majority in the speaker that controls what legislation comes off the wall for consideration.
Yeah.
So again and again, we work together to reach a consensus with them in committee, but they ignore the legislation that we're proposing and only cherry pick the bills that they want to consider from the wall.
That may be, the premise is true. But I don't know, I'm not in your committee or your committee, but what happens in my committee is we look at all the bills. We pick certain ones. We rank them.
You decide as a group?
Yeah.
Really?
We rank them.
I can't say that happens in
And
my
then,
committee.
and then when let's say you pick your top three, that's when if the majority didn't want to take up one of those three bills that the committee picked, they'd be held to pay in the committee. So they can stop it by just saying, no, we can't really do that, and that happens once in a while. But for the most part, our committee is picking the bills that we want to bring up. Now, they may be exactly the same ones that the majority wants, but look at the bills that have come out of the healthcare committee.
Well, one of them is the birthing centers,
Yep.
and you're going to take that one up. You said you wanted to talk about that
Yeah,
one.
sure. I'll do it right now if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the birthing centers, they have to be freestanding. They can't be part of a hospital like the birthing centers that we have now. They're highly regulated. All of the staff that are in there, they have to be licensed. They can't work above the threshold of their license. They have to have a commitment with the local fast squad or whatever first responders there are in the area. So what it's going to do is stop, number one, stop people from Vermont, birthing persons from Vermont, go to New Hampshire. There are 2 birthing centers in New Hampshire that they go to. Let's put it this way. I don't know if it's going to stop people that have already gone there from going there, but it may, if it's closer to home, people that are having babies will probably go to the place that's closer to home. They have to have an agreement with the hospital in case something goes wrong. And they have to be within a certain distance from the hospital in case something goes wrong. So they're pretty highly regulated. And if I was to guess how many birthing centers will come out of this bill, we may see 2 or 3. I definitely think you'll see one in Burlington because of the population over there. You may see one down close to Dartmouth, in that area, down there. And you might see one, I didn't mean Dartmouth, I meant Rutland, because they have a big hospital down there too. And you might see one here in central Vermont.
Well, I'm curious, you said it had to be a certain distance from a hospital. Do you remember how, you don't,
9/10 of a mile is
really?
is where
Okay, so-
the one in New Hampshire to hospital. 6/10 of a mile.
So now that's S18, right?
Pardon me?
S18?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not to spread them out to make it a choice, either the hospital or the birthing center, just make the birthing center another option.
It's independent from.
Okay.
Yeah. And from all the statistics and everything that we saw, you get, for the individual having the child, they have a better experience. It's like being in your home. And right now, you have, in Vermont anyway, you have a baby normally either at home or in the hospital. Some of the hospitals have had birthing centers. Gifford had them. Is it North Country? I think it's North Country had one. They just don't get used enough for the hospital to be able to support it.
Okay.
So this is supposed to be, you're probably going to get somebody that's going to invest in it, and but it's highly, highly regulated. I mean, it's just, they want to make sure that everything goes right. So that's what it is. Is there anything there that you have, Michael, that, about the bill that I've missed?
No, no. Looks like requires health plans to cover licensed midwifery.
Yeah, and the birthing center itself has to be licensed by the Office of Professional Regulation. So do the staff in there.
So it says it's exempt from certificate of need.
Yes,
Do you
that's
know
a big
what's that?
deal.
Do you know what that? I don't know.
Well,
what that is.
that's from the Green Mountain Care Board. With the changes that we made at the Green Mountain Care Board, we went to, I think it's $10 million is the lowest threshold that has to be made. So birthing centers will probably never even come near that. None of them will ever cost $10 million unless they put up another hospital. And it's all birthing centers in there, and they have all rooms like you have in a house, and you just go in there like it's an apartment or something, and you go have the baby and get out. Right now, the birthing center one of them in New Hampshire, I know where it is, it's in a shopping mall.
Really?
Yep, it's in a shopping mall, and they have a big stretch of the shopping mall, and it's just like a house in there. You know, it's got a TV in the living room and a kitchen.
So there was probably available space in the commercial space, and that's why it is where it is.
Could be, but it meets all the qualifications.
Right.
And by the way, New Hampshire's birthing centers are very highly regulated too.
Interesting.
So anyway, it's supposed to help the mother be more calm and
What about cost? Is it going to wind up
it
being
costs
cost
less.
saving?
It costs
Okay.
less than being in the hospital.
Okay.
Once you get into the hospital, that cash register starts going chink, 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 chink. If you're in the birthing center, it'll be lower cost. You're going to have a midwife there. You're not going to have the doctor and all that stuff. I mean, they can if they want, but it's not required.
Okay.
Nice. Let's see here. You want to talk about road salt?
About who?
Road salt.
Oh, the chloride bill. Yeah, that's been. We've taken a lot of testimony on that.
Do you know what number that is?
86, H86, I believe. But it's the way it's billed right now is a voluntary program, and it would be for contractors. It would not apply to the state. The state already has a chloride program and a training, and they also have a lot of, on their trucks, a lot of electronic equipment that they can monitor. With GPS and all the other stuff, they know apparently, because I spoke with somebody higher up in the AOT, and they know whether the plow is up or down, whether they're applying salt, how much per mile, where they are, things like that. This bill does not right now require a contractor, a private contractor, to have any of that high-tech equipment, because what we've seen in testimony is that there are ways to calibrate the equipment that the trucks have. If you know your speed and things like that, there are ways to know how many pounds per mile, or however they
Measure it.
measure it. There is a limited liability piece to the bill that has gone to, I think Judiciary has it, and that was a stumbling block in the Senate, because there's a Senate bill also. And it's still, I think, going to be a stumbling block, the limited liability exemption. If private contractors who opt into this program, there's going to be a certification fee, and if they do all the certification and they keep up on the record keeping, which a lot of contractors are concerned about. The record keeping means more, more man hours, more office time, whatever. So there's a couple of pieces that certain people have expressed concerns about. But we've taken a lot of testimony, and the reason being is there are concerns at A&R over a possible requirement from the EPA for a TMDL, total maximum daily load, because of some of the testing where there have been problems with the concentrations of salt in the lakes and the rivers and stuff like that. The problem with if they come out with a TMDL is it's going to be virtually impossible to take the salt out of the water. It's one of those things where the solution to this kind of pollution is dilution. You're not going to be able to remove the salt. It's going to be very expensive, and it's going to be the water is probably going to be just as damaging to any of the ecosystem that the water gets dumped back into. So my concern is, is it only going to be, how long is it going to remain as a voluntary program? Because once we have this, is it going to be a year? Is it going to be 2? And if it becomes mandatory, then what is going to be mandatory? Because some of this electronic equipment, when it malfunctions, we heard a story, a horror story at the AOT. They had a group of trucks that was a problem with, and plows and wings were going up and down when the driver was not wanting them to go up and down. It's a serious danger problem. They got it worked out, but in the meantime, you've got trucks that are down that you need on the road. These small municipalities, you got a municipality that's only got 2 or 3 trucks. If one of them is down, that's a big deal. So there are still things that need to be worked out with it. I understand the premise, you want to keep the salt out of the rivers and the creeks, but the liability, you have, maybe it's a, a strip mall or a department store or a supermarket, and you're a contractor who is in this program. There's additional record keeping, but one of my main concerns also is if you're limiting your salt to limit the amount of salt runoff, then are you going to be applying less more often? If you're applying less more often, then it's going to be more man hours and it's going to be more fuel burned. So is the program, what it saves in salt application, to me, it potentially could be adding more in man hours and in wear and tear on trucks, and also fuel burned. So
it looks like municipalities aren't going to be required.
Municipalities are not required.
So let's be honest. I mean, the biggest users of salt in the state of Vermont are probably going to be municipalities. Am I correct?
I would say some.
Really?
Like you've got Barry City, Barry Town, probably. In the town that I worked for Washington for a while. We had 52 miles of road. 99% of it was gravel. We were not applying salt. So I see your point.
This
there
is
are going to be
affecting
some
small businesses.
Yes, it's going to definitely affect them.
What
One of
happens
the
with wasn't there one, is part of this bill a mixture of salt and water?
Well, it's not just there's calcium chloride, there's magnesium chloride.
Yeah.
There also is, you're talking about brines.
Yeah.
When it's sprayed onto the roads.
Right,
a lot
right.
of that is pre-applications. When you know there's going to be a storm,
Yeah, you
if the
put it down.
conditions are right, you spray it on, and sometimes it even dries on, but when the snow comes down, it falls onto the pre-treated road, and it immediately starts to melt because it makes heat and it keeps the surface clear. There's a lot of questions I still have, with respect to the reduction in salt. Apparently this has worked very well for the state in reducing the salt. But with respect to transportation, AOT get federal funds for their roads? The answer to that is yes. I don't know the conditions of getting federal funding with respect to keeping the roads, clear of snow. Do they need to be bare? Something like that. So is it going to come down to the state roads are going to have a certain standard and other roads be held to a lower standard because we don't want to lose federal funds for the state state roads, any state roads we get federal funding for, or the interstates. I'm sure it's not going to. They're only going to reduce the salt application on the interstates to a certain extent, and then
Because it would be too dangerous.
I would say. So
Now, they tried an experiment with not treating the roads with salt for a while. My memory is that didn't work out too well.
well, I don't. Well, the thing is, they're going to
I
have.
swear they try that experiment every year.
Well, it's one thing. Okay, there's different plow blades you can use, but once you get a certain amount of traffic running over the snowstorm, and the snow, look, at different temperatures, it's going to stick differently. But once you get a certain amount of snow on the roads, it makes it harder to maintain
It's like ice.
Yeah, and if you apply sand, the sand is only going to work for a certain amount of time. If you have roads above 30 miles an hour, the sand is going to wind up getting driven right off and blown right off the road. So sand is only going to work in certain instances, and you're going to wind up buying a lot more sand. And sand can get to be expensive, especially if you're buying stuff from the mines that comes off the screeners and not just mine sand, which is fine, although it doesn't, in a lot of cases, it's not going to work as good as some of the sand that comes off of these screeners because it's not as dark and it's not as coarse either.
Yeah.
So
A lot to it.
for me, there are a lot of questions still. I am not 100% sold on this right now. I get the idea that you want it because it's going to affect the fish and other wildlife in the rivers and the creeks and the lakes, but there's a safety issue and some other things. And who's going to be, what level of limited liability? That's one of the main concerns in judiciary right now, that limited liability, because we did hear testimony from a tort attorney, and I mean, he basically said, we haven't seen best management practices, and that is going to be probably one of the sticking points.
Yeah.
Do you foresee that bill passing? I know it looks like it's moving.
It's moving. If I was to say today, it's probably not going out unanimous. That's my feeling, my gut feeling right now. It's not going out unanimous. I would like I would like to see, and I did suggest it in committee, a education campaign for the public, not just for the contractors. Obviously, the state drivers have that kind of education, and the municipalities. What we were told was the state will take on any municipality. If they have openings, all the municipalities can take that training free. But to put public service announcements, I think would be a great idea, so that the public actually knows, look, we live in a very environmentally conscious state, right? So if we were to put a public education campaign out there to let people know that the salt intrusion, the chloride intrusion into lakes and rivers and ponds and creeks is an issue, it's affecting our fish and the other wildlife, that's a great way, because then you have the mom and pop store owner or the grocery store chain saying, look, we want to be environmentally conscious. When you hire a contractor, say, look, we want you to put as little as possible down. We want our customers to be safe, but we want to be environmentally conscious. This way, it's not a back and forth where the customer isn't, going out and saying, just lay it on there because I don't want, I want my parking lot completely bare.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure there are going to be some who ask for a salt sand mix because that is coming up in committee also. But speaking of salt sand mix, one of the things that's become an issue is salt sheds. Some places, some municipalities right now just cover it. There's a provision in there by a certain date for salt shed to be,
Enclosed.
So-
enclosed, covered. That creates an issue with how do you get them loaded up? Because some places they drive up onto a hill or a ramp and then dump it. Okay, and you have some that there's a provision in there where the salt and the sand sheds or sand piles, it's looking at how close they are to standing water because they don't want runoff. So there's a number of things that are still getting batted back and forth. I got a feeling it's probably because it came up and we've taken so much testimony. At some point there's going to be a vote, but there are still questions that need to be asked, especially if our chair is looking for a unanimous vote. Right now, it's not there. It's not there.
So I know that it looks like it's 2026 that the inventory needs to be done for all the different,
For the storage, sand and salt. Right.
yeah.
And I think, we heard so much testimony, I can't remember, but I
gonna
think
put-
the state pretty much knows where the state of their storage
You guys
is.
gonna put money into the bill so that municipalities can get money for funding to
I
relocate
think
this?
there is an
See, This is
appropriation.
one of the problems with the state of Vermont, is that it puts unfunded mandates on municipalities and schools for that matter. And then people piss and moan about the taxes. And
Well,
it's
yeah.
like,
Well, look, and I think there's one full-time employee in there, so there's an appropriation for that, which goes and piles on more state employees, which I'm not sure we need any more of right now. Weren't you and I just talking not too long ago about affordability? So there are a lot of moving parts in this bill that still need to get worked out. But there is an appropriation, but I think it has to do with the administering or finding a outside contractor to administer a training. But and that's, here we go again with, once you start something, how do you keep it from growing,
so it's
both in cost and scope?
$150,000 for a one full-time classified A&R position to run the program, and $250,000 for startup of the certification program, not to
Yeah.
be funded long-term via fees, or to be funded by long-term by
Well, that's
fees.
another question, because we heard testimony from New Hampshire, because New Hampshire has I think they call it Green Snow program. And the testimony we got was that it was a success. But I believe one of the numbers that was thrown out was that, and I can't remember if it was yearly or every other year that there was a certification, but I think the certification cost was like a $400 permit. So we did some calculations, just a couple of us back of the napkin, and that came out to like $400,000. So that $250,000 to do the startup for the certification, I don't think should actually need to be repeating, because it should wind up funding itself. But here again, still, for me, still too many questions, unanswered questions.
So we'll move on from that riveting.
Sorry.
That was a riveting conversation about salt and sand.
It'll definitely get more riveting when the snow comes and we're driving and crashing our cars because we don't have salt on
Well,
the roads.
that's the other thing. We live in Vermont, right? For years and years and years. I learned something this past fall. I didn't know years ago, long time ago, before cars were really that prevalent on the roads, that they rolled the roads.
That's right.
So they could drive,
So they could tow a
horse-drawn
sleigh.
Sleds.
Right.
Sleighs.
I didn't know that. So there was a time in this state when the roads were tough to get up and down when there was snow.
Get everybody skates.
Yeah, well, there you go. There you go.
Well,
So
tough to-
it depends on just how much I think of a public education campaign you want and how much salt you actually truly can or want to reduce. I think there's going to be a limit. So,
On that snow rolling thing.
yeah. Don't tell me you were one of those guys.
No. It's probably called progress.
Well, and
His sleigh is
industrial-
towed by 8 tiny reindeer.
We're running up on time issues here because Topper's got to go.
What time is
It's
it?
5:09. So,
Oh, okay.
all right. So what we'll do is we'll end the show. We'll talk about kids code and age appropriate design and how Vermont's going to fix. So that's.
this is new to me.
We'll let Topper run away, but the kids code, what it does is because we've got a huge problem in our society with children using social media inappropriately.
Okay.
And the design of the code is not healthy for children. Sort of like when we stop kids
It's
from
predatory.
smoking. It is.
Design of
It's-
you mean the algorithm that's in
Correct.
social? Okay, gotcha.
Correct.
All right. That code.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're passing legislation out of the Commerce and Economic Development area that's gonna make it so that there's more protections for our children because we need to have protections for our children.
Absolutely.
These social media companies, they prey on children and there's no systems. They claim that, oh, well, it's free speech. Well, no, it's not.
yeah, the
The
kids, we're supposed to be
the
taking care of our kids, right?
But
Protecting.
the content is free speech. How you direct children to that is not, that's a different situation.
You're right. You're right. Now, I don't know if I don't think we discussed this, but there is a big movement now. I don't know if we have a bill in education or maybe in your committee about cell phone free schools. It's definitely been getting a lot of traction. And there was a presentation down in room 11, and I sat in on it. It wasn't very well attended, but I'm glad I did sit in on it. There were 2 school administrators. I don't know if they were principals. One, I think, was down in Virginia, and one was, I think, from the Sharon Academy. I'm not 100%. Mm-hmm. But they had a program for the cell phones free schools that they introduced. And they
Yeah,
implemented.
Harwood's had one that's been implemented for a while now.
I think there's one in St. Johnsbury.
At the
also.
academy, yeah.
And apparently they're very successful. There's a little bit of resistance at first. They're not expensive to implement. And apparently the kids are paying more attention. Everything points to it's
It
a
works.
it's a great move. It's a good move and definitely in the right direction.
The invention of the
So,
cell phone was the beginning of the end. I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
I'm
it's-
guilty of it. Mike's guilty of it.
Yeah,
You're
me too,
guilty of
sure.
it. Spending too much time on our devices and lacking that human interaction
I
is
know
terrible. And
that I would
the younger
love it.
you are, the worse it is.
I would love to see it. Mike, what do you think? Short of things like these shows going down, if this went down for 2 weeks, I'd love it. I really would. I remember what it was like before that.
I'm not gonna lie.
You love your technology.
It's a problem for me, but I also acknowledge that my life would be so much better without it.
I remember what it was like, and even in business, I was in business before these. You leave your answering machine on. You'd complete a day's work. You come
had
home.
business hours. You had more time with your family. You had more in-depth social interaction. And
Absolutely.
I remember getting a roll of dimes when I headed off to school. And if I needed anything, I headed over to the payphone. And granted, there's no payphone structure left anymore. And there's, arguments to be made for safety and things like that are certainly valid. But as far as what it's doing to young children's brains and the pressure that it's putting on them with having to have some sort of lens on social media is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty confident that our committee is gonna pass that out. I don't know if it's gonna be next week. No, I know it's not gonna be next week. But I wouldn't be surprised. It's coming out. it's coming out one way or another. I think it's a good bill. I think it protects our children, and I think, in 30 years, we'll be looking at it like, when we were allowing children to smoke cigarettes. And it'll be,
I remember Joe Camel.
yeah,
I
exactly.
guess he's alive and well in China.
Is he?
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
did not know that.
yeah.
You know what's alive and well in China? TikTok. Just not the way that it is here in America. They teach them how to do math over there. Whereas over here,
We teach you to boil your chicken in NyQuil to ease the symptoms of COVID.
Okay.
You don't remember when that happened?
No,
Oh my God,
I don't
was
remember that.
terrible.
or the cinnamon test. But anyway, so more information on that will be coming, I'm sure. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up. I want to say thank you for, Topper's Con, but thank you too for sticking around as well.
Thanks,
And,
Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for watching the 802 Scoop Capital Beat.